Okay, everyone, we're already 5 minutes over our time frame, so I'll get started here. And I want to thank you for joining us today. And this webinar is our second webinar, and we're planning to have one every month. This particular webinar is focused on our Union Community's contactless solutions. Contactless means no touching or time and attendance or access control. And today, I, Corey Bellamy, and you can see in the video here, and Wilson will be presenting and answering your questions, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. What we're going to do is I'm going to do the presentation all in one time. You can type in your questions in the MS Teams chat, and we will get to them as soon as we can, but we'll dedicate some time at the end of the webinar to answer some of those questions and possibly discuss them at the same time. So you can put in your questions at any time. Now, the whole topic of this webinar is to give you the basics of how our facial products work, how our iris product works, and our thermal technology. We have covered this earlier this year, but I think it's a good idea to go back to it because we have a lot of customers using it these days. And we also have some issues with setup and about some of the features. So I think it's a good time now to go over those right now, the important features related to facial and iris and thermal. So we hope by the end of the session, you'll have a greater understanding about our facial, iris, and thermal technology and how it works and the best application for them. Now, our table of contents, what we're going to discuss today is a little bit about the facial and iris. How does facial technology work? And some of the terminal setup considerations you should do for your facial devices, and also some facial features to consider that you may have overlooked when installing your system. And of course, things will go wrong, and possibly some of the things that you can do to fix those or remedy them. And then part two, we're going to discuss a little bit about thermal technology, thermal camera and the thermal module, the types and the solution, and some important features associated with the thermal technology that we have. And then finally, I'm going to cover some demonstration videos that we created just yesterday. It's better to do the videos rather than live videos. And then finally, as I said, we're going to cover some Q&A and go live with some Q&A questions and answer them for you right there. Now, part one again, facial and iris technology. That's our main topic right now. And first and most important, a lot of our customers are used to using fingerprint devices. And people using fingerprint devices understand that we're capturing a fingerprint with a camera or a CMOS sensor. You can see that facial technology will follow the same type of technology. We're actually capturing a face instead of a fingerprint. Obviously, the focal point is a lot different, but when you look at fingerprint versus facial technology, you can see that fingerprint is a very focused area and it's covered, it's protected. So what we're going to have to do is make sure that you are considering your environmental conditions when installing your facial system. The first part of the facial system is a capture point, and that is fully relied on the hardware that we have, which is a 2-megapixel camera. And the next part, you may have guessed, is the extraction part. The extraction part, main responsibility, is for pulling out the important points from the face and stores that into a smaller file. A lot of people ask, or they query, do you store the image in your database? No, we do not store the image of the person after taking the capture. We're actually storing a smaller file with important template points that we call them. Now, we have the three parts: extraction, comparing, and matching. Those three parts are heavily focused and relied on the software algorithm that we're using. I'll just talk a little bit more about the extraction, comparison, and matching points. As I said, we use specific points on the face to determine what are the best points and how we're going to capture the face. So, and those templates have, I can say approximately sizes from maybe, depending on the algorithm, 100 bytes up to 10K bytes. And for per person, when you're registering a person, it could be up to 2 templates, up to 10 templates for one user that's registered as a one user per 10 templates for one user, or one user can have up to 5 templates. In our system, it's the basic of 5 templates for facial. And of course, you can see in the picture I've illustrated on the left side and on the bottom right side, to give you a more detailed idea, you're looking at the differences between the eyes, the nose, the mouth, with the cheekbones, the ears. So it's very important that when you register a person, that those places, that area on the face is exposed to your registration area. If you can understand, when you're using, for example, a mask is covering about half of your face. So please consider that when you're doing your registration. As you can imagine, the registration is the most important part of your facial technology when you'll be using the device, because it's using that template as a base comparison for all the other capturing. Now, it's also very important to go over again the differences between Union Community's facial products. And I'm just outlining a few differences here. The main differences are the template compatibility, the number of users, so face or fingerprint, type, image technology, and the service solution that it supports. When you're looking at our UBio Pro, it's a totally separate system on its own. And the main reason users choose this particular device is because the number of 1 to N facial users that it can support, up to 40,000. And then you're looking at the Pro Lite and the AC7000/T9. They can have up to 1 to N of 8,000. And that's a different algorithm altogether that we use. And then when you're looking at the Pro 2 and the X Face, they both support 1 to N facial of 20,000 users. And another important point that some people overlook is the multimodal factor or the technology. Multimodal, by I mean it supports face or fingerprint. That may be important for some users who want extra security, or if for some reason the facial part is not working and they want to be able to support some kind of access technology. So we have the fingerprint support as well. And there's a new mode or the new type that I want to talk about that you should be aware of. And between the Pro, Pro Lite, and the Pro 2 and X Face, they have 2 types. As you're already aware, the Pro, Pro Lite have a stationary. Stationary means that people have to stop in front of the device and present their face to the device or the reader. The Pro 2 and X Face, however, we have the walkthrough technology. The walkthrough technology is meaning that you can actually walk through, like a speed gate type of application, walk through and it will automatically authenticate you. Both are 2 different algorithms, 2 different technology. And that brings up the next point of image technology. Pro, Pro Lite, they focus mainly on IR light. I would say about 75% of the detection capturing is based on IR light. And the Pro 2 X Face is based on visible light. And just to give you a little story, I'll go back to that slide again. This picture here is showing you what an IR light or an IR image will look like. So when our Pro or Pro Lite is capturing an image, this is what it will look like. Now I say capture, so from that point it's capturing, is still extracting important points called a template from it. And then when you're looking at visible light, Visible light is the obvious camera, RGB, red, green, blue type of visible light. So there are two different technologies. So the algorithms, templates are not compatible with each other. And then the other point I should mention is a server solution that they're all compatible with, and I mentioned at the bottom, and you can look at that in more detail later. Now, next, I want to cover some of the facial features that are important when setting up your system, and then I have a demonstration after. I'll go through that at the end of the session. Now, one important feature is the face size, or AKA, also known as distance control. Distance control is controlled by the face size. You can have a lower setting will give you higher distance, and a higher value setting will give you lower distance. Now we have a default value between, I think it's 150, and we recommend a range between 150 and 350. The optimal distance when using the facial device is anywhere from 0.5 meter to 1 meter. And I'll show you the demonstration later, and it's hard to show you with the picture described in the video. What we have on the screen of our Pro 2 and X-Face is a green outline template box that indicates the user is in range of the facial capture. If the user is not in range, you will see no outline image, or you might see a red outline image indicating that the user is not face is not captured correctly. So remember, when setting up, that face size is an important factor to set up. Usually the default value will be good. The second option to consider is the multi-face detection option. I would say that this multi-face detection option, one of the main reasons to use it is when you're using it at a speed gate. You have a lot of people passing through entry or access point at one time. You want more than one person to be authenticated at one time. So that's the optimal place to use this multi-face detection. I'll show you a demonstration later rather than explain it to you. So, but the maximum, you can have 4 face users in one window at that time. An important note, as you can see in the slide, if mask detection is enabled, you cannot use this feature. As you can understand, with mask detection, it's covering nearly half of the face, which makes it more difficult for detecting your face in those cases. So that's why we don't recommend and not use that in the case. In all other cases, if you don't have a specific application for multi-face detection, please disable the option. Now, the next subject or the next option is a mask detection. A lot of people have asked for this since the onset of COVID. This is an important feature for the end users. People want to detect when the user is wearing a mask or when the user is wearing a mask correctly. So that's what the mask detection function is for. Why I put the 2 images on the screen is to show you an approximation of, with all of the points that we use to capture for a template, you can see when using a mask, nearly half of them are covered when using a mask. That's important to note, because if you have a specific application that requires mask all the time, you should at least consider iris technology, and I'll talk about that in the next couple slides about that. The main point of facial detection is detecting the face, but if you're covering it up with a mask, please think about the consequences. Now, there's 4 different settings related to mask detection. And one of them, of course, is not enabled, but there's another one guiding the user. It's not going to do any restrictions on entering. And the other one is a secondary restriction where it's going to deny access if the mask is not worn. However, if it's not worn correctly, it will still warn the user and allow access. And the highest level of restriction is going to deny access and put up the appropriate message on the screen. And it's going to deny the user from entering at all at that time. Now, I thought it's important to cover some of the common issues that have popped up along the way during our troubleshooting, during our technical sessions with some customers. And some of the issues you may see is unregistered users authenticating successfully, or registered users not working, or in some cases, registered users authenticating successfully as a different user, or the face is generally not detecting. Now, you can refer to some of these cases as FAR, false acceptance rate. That's when another user who is not registered in the system is accepted in the system, false acceptance. And then you have false rejection rate. So when a user is registered in the system and they are denied access, maybe the face was not captured correctly or bad quality registration, that is referred to as FRR, false rejection rate. Some of the things that you can possibly do to review or overcome, and I think in 70 to 90% of the cases, they're looking at installation location. We have a certain guideline that we publish, we have a document for that recommends how to install it, certain heights, and where to install it under a covered area where there is no direct sunlight on the user's face or coming from the user behind. That's a very important part when considering the facial device is the lighting conditions, not necessarily direct sunlight or sunlight itself, but also fluorescent light. Please be aware of that when you're installing your system. Secondly, if you are experiencing a high number, some people that unregistered people who are allowed access, as I said before, FAR, I've highlighted on the right side their matching level. Now, usually the default level will be okay for what is set at. However, if you're seeing a high FAR or unregistered people are allowed access, try increasing that level to something a little bit higher. Don't go by too much, maybe by 2 or 3 points, and then do some tests, not just with one person, but with a few people. A few tests, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes of testing multiple people. If it works fine, then you consider the matching level increase is okay. Another thing is user cannot be identified, FRR. In some cases, the liveliness detection may be set too high. The liveliness detection is for detecting real face and not photo images or video images. In most cases with our algorithm that we use, the default setting will be fine. You only need to really increase that on instruction from our support team. So try to keep it at the lowest level possible. Because the higher level that you have, the more detailed checking it's going to do on the user's face. It requires a lot more points. So you can imagine when the user's wearing a mask, some of those points have disappeared now. So please keep that in mind, the liveliness detection, keep it at the default value. And another important point is the registration. I covered that in the last few slides. The most important point is registration, the template of how the face is going to compare against the database template. In most cases, we see another, say, 75% of the user's face is not enrolled correctly or poor quality. We do have a guideline for this, and we have recommendations. And of course, the most important is when you're registering a user is without any accessories on, no glasses, no hat, no mask, etc. Nothing covering the face. And also the second point to consider is closer to the device, within 50 centimeters at least. This is giving a very detailed picture, image of the face, and capture of the face. And you'll see that in some of the demo videos that I'll cover later. Okay, now that we're done with the facial portion, I'm going to discuss a little bit about the iris technology. Now, please remember, iris is totally different from facial technology. It uses iris and not the face. We don't have too many people considering right now because there's a lot of facial technology on the market, but it's something that you should consider and take a look at as a second option and a second technology for your customer that will add a higher security level for the application. So let me just talk about how this works basically. And before I covered on facial is the capture part first of all. On the iris, we have two cameras, and one of the camera responsibility is for facial guidance. So you don't have to put your face up to the device and squint and understand, oh, my face in the right position. If this is not the right position, where am I? What's going on? That's why we have the second camera. We have the auto tilt function depending on the height of the person. This is very important. So it also uses a 2-megapixel 2-megapixel camera, and it recognizes the presence of a face and it will adjust the auto tilt accordingly. The auto tilt has a camera in it, and it will tilt the iris camera to capture the user and guide the user. It has the image around their green image, red image, and it's guiding the user to where they should put their face at that particular time for ideal capturing. And then after that, of course, it's the capturing using a secondary camera. We have a 5-megapixel high resolution camera for capturing the iris. So, you know, the iris has a very small points that it has to capture, so we have a higher resolution camera. And just like with the facial, the next part for the actual capturing part is the extraction into a template, and then the comparison and matching. This is all software and the algorithm part of it. And of course, as I said with the facial, the iris as well takes unique points from the iris and only extracts those unique points. It does not take anything related to the image itself. And then the comparison part, of course, finds a template in the database. Oh, this is quite almost matching. It takes a group of templates and does a comparison. And then it does the final matching with that group of templates and make sure that we're comparing. And it's going to match all of the template data that we are comparing from the captured image to the database image. So remember that. The next slide, I'm just going to cover some important points about iris technology, our iris technology, UBio X Iris. And this is a good selling feature regarding it is the distance is within 50 centimeters. So you don't have to be close up to the device that's guiding your face. Like I said before, a very uncomfortable registration or authentication process. The distance is quite fast and quite convenient. And it's almost immediate when you can see when you're walking through. We use it every day here in our office at the front entrance. It's quite convenient to use. Now, it uses 2 eyes during the registration, and it uses 1 template per eye. So during the registration, both eyes are captured and uses as a template. 2 templates are stored for the user. And during the authentication process, it only needs 1 eye. And some of you may wonder, well, what if I'm using contact lenses or I have cataracts or things like that? That's why we have the 2-eye registration process. So if one person is not, say they have a patch on the other eye, it's still going to register correctly with 1 eye, but of course you're reducing your quality of the capture. And also that's related to people having cataract conditions as well. Cataract conditions, you can do online search about iris technology and you'll find the same information that I did. Cataract conditions will be okay, but since it's a degenerative kind of situation, it will require users to re-enroll their eyes at regular intervals every 3 to 6 months. And also important point is people using contact lenses is best to register without the contact lenses or the glasses. Okay, now that we've finished our first part regarding the facial and regarding the iris and how it works and some features associated with it, we're going to dedicate a little bit of time here to answering some of the questions. If you had any questions typed into our Teams view at that time. Let me see for a second here. Okay, I'm just reading out one of the questions from a customer. Is it possible to transfer biometric patterns or templates between UBio Pro 2, between different UBio Pro 2? So you have more than one Pro 2 and you want to transfer the templates from one Pro 2 to the other Pro 2. Yes, of course, that's one of the basic functions. So you would do that mainly in the software, in the Alpheta software. The user would be stored in the Alpheta database already. And if it's not, you would get the user from that terminal. And then you would select those users, and then you could select the actual terminal that you want to download the information to. Let me see some other questions. We have one question. What is AE? One of the options that I didn't discuss there. AE option in the facial setting, auto balance, auto lightning. So this is based on our camera capturing in a 50-60 hertz ratio, and also your fluorescent lights are on the same frequency, which may cause some interruptions or some interference with the video portion of our capturing with our facial capturing. So in that case, you have the option to change the AE. If you're getting some interference where it's not very clear on the capturing of the facial, then that means the fluorescent lights in the air are probably interfering with the same frequency that we're using for the camera capture. So you can use that for checking it. Now, I think it's important. I'm going to go on to the next subject because we're getting on to 30 minutes here, and we can cover more questions at the end of the session. So next, I want to discuss something about the thermal solutions. The thermal solutions, I'll go over the types that we have, and we have the two types, the camera and the module. However, first, I think it's important you understand why thermal solutions are needed. Now, with the onset of the COVID-19, fever screening systems are becoming more popular nowadays. I think it's a good idea for you to understand some of the basic concepts of this technology and maybe why it's needed for you. First, let me show you some of the advantages of using these screening technologies. Mainly people want to detect temperature of people through a public access point. Public access point means the person's not registered, and I'll show you a demonstration after. They don't have to be registered in the system. It's going to go over some fever screening. You'll see everywhere, probably everywhere that you go to these days that has some kind of temperature detecting device. That's what it means by public access point. And also you may want to use it for notify or prevention of entry of people who are potentially sick or who have a high fever, so irregular temperature. And another good point is it does fairly fast measurements on the surface skin temperature of many people at one time. So that's a good point to consider. And another good selling point is it's a no contact with the measurement system. So you just have to present your face up to the system, and then our thermal device will take your temperature automatically. There's no contact. And of course, there's reasonable accuracy between 0.5 degrees plus or minus, depending on using the camera or the module device. Now, there's another term referred to NCIT. I don't know if anyone has heard of that. Non-contact infrared thermometers. That's what we're referring to this kind of technology. So have you ever heard of NCIT, non-contact infrared thermometers? So you don't have to have contact with them at that time. Now, normally skin temperature is a combination of the core body temperature and the ambient. By ambient, I mean the environmental temperature. So therefore, the change is not only due to fever, but also can be related or can be combined with the environmental temperature. So it's important that you consider the environment you're installing or using your fever screening system in. This is not just with our fever screening system, this is with any fever screening system you'll see in the market. consider your environmental conditions. And here are some of the basic applications we have seen used for the fever screening system for the thermal solutions. So obviously at your work or business, when you're having guests or people coming in every day, retail shopping area, when you have entrance to the public area, when you're going into retail shopping, they take your temperature, educational facilities, transportation, buses, trains, anything like that, medical hospital, of course, and anywhere that basically has public areas that you can have a fever screening system. Now, let me tell you the types of thermal solution, fever screening solution that we have. One is the module, and that is based on thermal pile technology that's referred to. It's composed basically of several infrared IR sensors. And then we have a camera solution. Camera is referred to as thermographic technology. That's using a standard camera focusing on IR light. So not just RGB standard light, it's infrared IR light. And just so people understand, what are the main differences that you're going to see between the module and the camera? The module, the two types, remember, is the thermal pile technology, and the camera is referred to as thermographic technology. The module has a decent frame rate of 12 frames per second. The camera, of course, is 30 frames per second. And you get a little bit different accuracy with the module compared to the camera. Then you have the field of vision, or the viewing area of the module or the camera. And you can see the camera will cover a little bit more area or more region for detecting. And then the camera also has a little bit of advantage with the temperature range of the environmental conditions. So, those are the three main features you'll see, main differences between the module and the camera. That's why you're paying a little bit more for the camera technology. And you might have some specific applications that need a camera. Now, next, I'm going to cover, even though this slide refers to the thermal module, but the picture is a camera. It's actually a thermal camera, and the camera have a model name called the TEQ2 or the TI2. We had a first revision camera that we used, which is a quite larger camera, and that was the TEQ1 or the TI1. We're no longer supporting or promoting that camera. We're now focusing on the TI2 camera. So the TI2 camera is referred to as also a mini camera. And the mini camera has the same functions as the previous one. It can cover up the distance of 0.3 to 2 meters. It's supported in Alpeta software. And it has a temperature display in Alpeta software that people getting access at that time are taking a temperature. The TI2 camera is supported on the UBio X Space and the UBio X Pro 2. And you can see some pictures there on the left side of the TI2 camera, a smaller image. Next is the thermal modules. The model name for the module is a Thermal I, or the Thermal I2. Now the thermal module supported products are the UBio X Pro 2 and the UBio X Iris. That's the Thermal I. The next slide has the X Space, but these are the specific module supported with the Thermal I. And of course, they have a distance of 0.3 to 2 meters and a temperature display also within Alpeta software. So remember, the Thermal I is in the Pro 2 and Iris. When you're ordering your particular Pro 2 or your Iris, you must specify the TS version, that you want it to support for the thermal module or the thermal camera, because we provide a bracket for mounting that module or the camera. And then, of course, for our UBio X Space, we have the Thermal I2 module. Thermal I2 is the same as the other one. It supports standard distance and has a temperature display as usual, and it's supported only on the UBio X Space. Remember, when you're ordering UBio X-Face, if you need thermal support, you would tell the salesperson UBio X-Face TS. So just to review that again, you have your thermal I2, which is supported on the UBio X-Face. Then you have the thermal I1, which is supported, the module supported on the Pro 2 and the Iris. And then you have your thermal camera. So now that you know and understand a little bit about what products we have that support the thermal technology, I'm going to go over some of the features that are associated with the thermal solution. Whether I choose UBio X Pro 2 or UBio X-Face, it does not matter. These options are the same in both. Of course, most important part is you have to enable the device. And when you enable device, you have to select a particular device that you need in there. It's going to give you a selection, and it's pretty obvious, TI2, which is the camera, or the TS module. And then it may have some legacy of the TI1, which is the original camera version. So just choose a particular module that you are using at that time. The thermal mode, and I'm going to cover that in one of the demo videos later, but the thermal mode is what you're going to need when you want to do your public or private mode for entry systems. Now, the mode at default, of course, requires registered users to enter access point. You can select unregistered users. Now, unregistered users will require any user who presents their face will take the temperature. You don't want to enroll them in the system. You just want them to pass by and take a quick temperature. That's what unregistered user setting is. And another neat setting is the unregistered user plus phone number. I see this used quite often in South Korea here. When we go to any place, coffee shop, theater, retail, shopping mall, they take your temperature, then they ask you for your phone number. So what this does is when you choose the unregistered plus phone number option, you're going to take your temperature, and then the user has to enter their phone number. And that information is stored in the authentication log in Alpeta, and you can see that later on. And if there, by chance, that user has some issue with the temperature or has some COVID-related issue or some sick, then you can at least contact that person and start making a tracing on that. And then there's another option for unregistered plus phone number plus auto register. So it's going to auto register the person in the system at that time. Then we have another mode called measurement mode. We have a general walkthrough mode, and then we have a precise or more detailed. I have a video of that. I'll demonstrate that later. The walkthrough mode is something you use in a speed gate or quick entrance type of system. Whereas if you want a more precise temperature measurement, it's going to require the user to put their face in a specific area on the screen, and it's going to take a temperature of that person for 1 to 2 seconds and make sure that that particular area is focused for taking the temperature, and it's going to get a temperature reading. Also, there's a guide on and off. So it's making sure your face is in an appropriate location, optimal location. And then we have the preview on and off. I think this preview on and off is very important. You're looking to debug the system because it's going to put on the bottom right corner of the LCD display, it's going to put on a thermographic image. So it's going to show the user taking their thermal image and making sure the user has a correct thermal image during their authentication period. I'll show you a demonstration video of that. And another point, where I put a bold letters note. Now, when you're first powering up your system or your thermal solution, either your thermal camera, specifically thermal camera, but you should consider the thermal module as well. You should wait up to at least 20 minutes for the thermal device to adjust to the environmental temperature, the environmental conditions. We've seen a lot of cases where people just power up and expect it to work right out of the box without waiting for it. without doing any settings, please wait at least 20 minutes and it will give you some period of time. When you first power it up, you can even test it yourself. You'll see it'll give you wrong temperature readings at first. So wait a period of time before using it and testing it, and then you'll get the right temperature reading later. The next slide is just some applications where you can use for the UBio X-Face or the thermal or the camera speed gate applications. It's showing you some of the stands that we have. The tall stand, and then we have a desktop type of stand. Of course, no mounting condition, and then a bracket for putting on a speed gate application. We have some of these available. You may be able to get them in your local market. If you have any more questions about that, you can ask your salesperson for any of those particular types of stands. So now that we covered the thermal part of it, we're going to bring it back to some questions. I'm going to check on Wilson to see how he's doing with his questions, see if he has anything he needs help with. Just a second, please, and I'll be right back to you. I'm just reviewing some of the questions myself, seeing what Wilson's been up to during my presentation time. Well, one of the important things, yes, we are recording this webinar for saving later, and we'll share that information with all the people who registered later. I hope you registered because I have no other way to contact you otherwise to give you the presentation material and the recorded session. Just reviewing any other questions. Nothing that we cannot handle or answer later, like we did on our first webinar session last month. We had a list of questions in which some of them we could not answer, but we did come back to, and we sent you that information later with a whole list of questions and answers to those questions. So please make sure to put down your questions in the Q&A session, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. If not, we'll answer them later and include it later. Right now, I'm going to change over to the demonstration area and show you some demonstration videos that Wilson and I created about some of the features, about mask detection, and what we have here in our office and how we use it. So let me go over the first UBio X Pro 2 distance control. Now, I turned off the audio on this. I'll share the video later, and you'll have a separate audio where you can hear me talking and explain some other things. But what I'm demonstrating here is our UBio X Pro 2 with our thermal I1 camera. That's the older camera, the larger camera. I have some reference material, which you're going to see pictures of the I2 camera. What we're going to do is register a person with their face. We're not demonstrating thermal right now. We're going to demonstrate the facial function and how you should register face. The optimal way to register a face is putting your face in the guide that we recommend. We've seen people with masks on, people who are 2 meters away. This is the best place. It's right directly in front of the device for registration. Of course, you can register further away, but it's going to reduce the quality. So Wilson is showing in that video there the registration, and he had the mask option on, which is the reason why I rejected him in the first place. So what we're going to show now is turn off the mask option, and then I'm going to show you some of the distance control setting. Remember, I covered the green template or green outline area. It's showing his face is within the range, which is in the distance control range. And now Wilson has stepped back a little bit. And obviously with the range setting that we have, it's not detecting him at that particular time at that distance. So you see the screen went to a timeout session. It's not really showing the focus here from the video, but you can test it yourself. So Wilson moved up a little bit more, and then now that it's within the distance range, it detected him and has the green template outline on the LCD. So that's with the distance control setting. And so we have a longer distance or stay right up at the front within 30 to 50 centimeters where your face has to be. Obviously, you're going to get higher quality detection when your face is directly up at the camera than it is at, say, 2 meters away. Wilson is now going to the face option. He's going to put the distance a little bit. I think he's going to change it to, I'm just showing you the different options there at that particular time. 350, it's going to a higher number is going to require the user to be closer to the device, as I said before. So he's farther away, not detecting, puts his face up, say within 100 to 150 centimeters, and it finally detects it. So please remember this distance control setting when you are testing your users, when you're setting up your system. If you need a farther distance control, 2 meters, 1.5 meters, 1.5 meters is about the default, but if you don't need the distance, select it, reduce it down to say 350. It's going to give you a higher quality and a better image capture at that time. Now, let me go over the next video with the multi-face detection. Multi-face detection, as I said before, it can capture up to 4 people at one time, but you cannot have mask detection enabled at that time. It will automatically disable it. So you cannot use mask detection when you're using multi-face function. And Wilson is in the video with his mask on, and I have my mask on because you can use it with the mask on. It's still going to detect your face. As I said before, and let me pause this stream. Okay, I'll just keep it going, but you can still use your mask for authentication, but you're limiting your quality of your facial detection when you're using a mask. Okay, the multi-face option. We only had 2 people at the time to do a demonstration, but when we were demonstrating, Wilson and I put our faces in at the same time in the same area. It detected one face, of course. So another person comes by and you have 2 people, it's going to detect both Wilson and I. It will toggle. It will probably focus on the larger of the 2 faces, but once it recognizes one, it's going to switch over to the other and it'll switch on to another. It won't try to recognize the same person more than once. It's going to focus. Any small movement is going to jump over to the next face and recognize that as well. Try it out, test it out for yourself. Now, I covered the display size, multi-face. I want to show you a little bit about the mask detection function and how that works right now in one of the demonstration video. The first mask detection function is with it disabled, where it does not require a user to wear a mask. Wilson's going to turn on the basic function of guiding, so it's not going to do any restrictions. It's not going to restrict the user to enter because we're going to put it on the okay, first is a none function. So it does not require a user to wear a mask. That's the basic way you would use your facial system. No mask required. And you can use a mask if you want. It's not going to detect if you have a mask. It's just going to allow access. This is when it gets exciting. We're going to put up the guide option. The guide option is just going to specifically guide the user to tell the user to put on the mask, or you're not wearing a mask. Okay, please wear a mask. It's just a warning message only. It's going to guide the user, please wear a mask. It's not restricting them on entering in the system. Now, even if you're not wearing a mask properly, it's going to tell you, make sure to wear it properly. So we even detect if you're wearing your mask up to your mouth or over to your nose, which is the optimal way. So the next option after guide is the secondary restriction level where it's going to guide the user to wear their mask properly if they're not wearing it correctly. So first part is it's going to restrict them if they're not wearing a mask in general. But even if they wear a mask, but they're not wearing it properly, it's going to give a warning only. Wilson's going to demonstrate next. If he didn't cover his nose, it's just going to give a warning that he is not wearing his mask correctly. But if his mask is fully off, it's not going to allow access. And then the last option is the highest security level with mask detection, and that's making sure the user is wearing a mask and or making sure the user is wearing a mask correctly. Let's do a quick demonstration of that. Denying, not allowing access. Please wear a mask. He's not putting the mask on. And of course, it allows the access to that point. And he's going to put the mask off his nose and it's going to deny access. So remember the difference between this one and the previous one is the previous one, it's just a warning if you're not wearing your mask correctly. Now let me jump over to the thermal option demonstration that we created. Of course, your face has to be in a specific area, and there's specific features, as I told you about before, which has a guiding feature. You see the outline on the LCD on the display as a red outline. That red outline is indicating your space is not in the temperature detecting range, not in the temperature detecting area. So if you don't have the guide on, you're going to either see a green or a red. So his face now is overhead for detecting his temperature is not in the temperature detection range. So it's giving a red outline on the guide area. So once he puts his face in range, it's going to detect the temperature, put the temperature on the display, and it's also going to put that temperature back to the Alpeta software program. And just to see some of the options in there again, and the preview on-off option, as I told you about before. And you have the basic option of the Fahrenheit in degrees Celsius. On the bottom, you're looking at this way, the bottom right corner is going to give you the thermal imaging of the person, how the camera is actually seeing that person. And then what is compared against the background. So you can set that. Of course, orange or red image is indicating it's detecting heat. A blue color, blue imagery is colder. Blue is cold, red is hot. So, and as I said before, you can set the temperature range that you want to select where you're going to cut off or where the level of temperatures before it gives a warning or before it gives a restrictive access to that area. So you can select the temperature range where the temperature is going to stop, or where you're going to get the level of where it's detecting the temperature before it gives you denied access. One of them is in front of our cafeteria, where we use for visitors that are coming into our cafeteria, where we have approach you, and we have the thermal module connected to it. And on there, it's just a public mode setting. So not registered people are there. And you can see we have a registration table where people put in their names and their phone numbers, and you can do your disinfecting of your hands at that time. So it's another good point here. You can use that phone number registration type that I mentioned before, setting where people can enter their phone number manually on there. So what you're seeing now is I'm not registered in this particular device. I step up to it, give me the temperature, then I put the temperature down and be booked into the registration area. Now, another application at I'm just going to pause this stream for a second here. At most of our entrance points into our our building, into our work areas. We have an iris and we have a facial device. Iris is for our testing and for our basically our TNA system. And then we have another facial device for just general in and out access. This access here is on our front door of our main entrance point where we have a UBio space for the temperature detection. And then we have our iris there that we use for TNA. Now I have iris videos that I'm going to show you. I'm going to include in the reference material later that you can have access to, and you're going to see them do a full walkthrough of the iris at that time. So you can see the iris later with that. So let me continue this video stream. And you're just going to see the temperature mode on the UBio space using the module. When we have the precise mode or detail mode setting, remember I said you have to put your face in a particular area on the screen where the optimal temperature will be taken at that time. So you'll see on the background, we'll get a close-up image in just a second. So you cannot just walk through on this particular application. It's showing the outline where your face, where the user's face has to be put when you're taking the temperature. So it's going to be highly focused on a specific area for taking a temperature, a more precise temperature reading at that time. Some guys trying to access there. I'm not sure who that is, but he looks like a foreigner in a Korean company. Better call the police. Okay, that's the demonstration of the UBio space. See, you cannot walk through. You require the user to step up to the device and take their temperature for at least 2 to 3 seconds before it's going to take the temperature at that time. Okay, that's about all the demonstration video I have right now for you. And it's coming to a close our presentation, but I have included some reference material at the end, which is going to give you some installation guide. It's going to give you some facial features that we covered, some of the liveliness detection, some of the infrared basics that I just talked about before. And I'm going to include much more links to these videos that I just demonstrated. So I hope that you enjoyed our session today. And I hope we answered most of the questions that you had. If you have any more questions, please put it in our Q&A session. We'll get to them anytime and register. I will send you the presentation file, the recorded file, the QA session, all the videos to this webinar session. And I hope this helped you to understand more about Unicommunity's facial technology, iris technology, how it works, some of the features associated with the facial and iris technology, and also the thermal technology, where it can be used, how it can be used, and some of the features that were used for it. So once again, thank you for attending our webinar session. I'm going to maybe remain online and look through some of the Q&A and possibly answer those and speak about those. So thank you again, and take care. Okay, welcome back. Wilson has his speaker on, so I'm going to ask him to tone it down so we don't get any feedback. I was talking to the screen myself there because I forgot to turn on my video, turn back my audio, turn off the mute. So we're just giving you some live feed video of Wilson and me answering questions, showing you that we are real. This is not a recorded session. I'm just going to go over one question here. AC7000, it showed that it had the auto tilt function. Yes, we had the auto tilt function in AC7000, but we do not have auto tilt function in Pro Lite or Pro. There's no auto tilt. It was just extra cost added for no particular reason on Pro and Pro Lite. But if you really look at the AC7000 and Pro Lite, you're going to see that the Pro Lite is an improvement on 7000 because it has a lot more IR LED functionality. It has more, about say 50% more IR LEDs on the bottom part, and then also on the top part more IR LEDs. And also there's a specific mounting position or mounting bracket that we have that makes it the optimal height and optimal conditions for detecting the face, and the camera range, the camera field of vision is much greater. So there is no need for auto tilt function, bouncing your head up and down. There's no need for doing that on the Pro Light. If you mount it at the recommended height that we have, with the mounting bracket that we have, you'll be fine with no auto tilt function in the Pro or Pro Light. Do you have one? Okay. Just an announcement in one of the chats. Union Community is exhibiting in GITEX next week, GITEX 2021, from the 17th to the 21st, World Trade Center, Dubai. That will be, yep, and published it on. Okay. Go ahead to speak. Don't be afraid. We're both on live video here. SDK question, biometric templates. Okay, I think that's about it. So once again, thanks for joining us. So I'm going to end the session now, and I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk together soon. Take care. Cheers. Bye.